What's going on, guys? It's Marcus here with Discover Ignite, where we discover possibilities and ignite change. Now, I want to continue on this events that have changed my life. And up to this point, I have had like 3 videos before this video talking about what I've gotten, going in the military, moving a lot as a kid and coming out of the military. And one of the other biggest life-changing events that I've had was essentially going back to college, right? Not just going back to college, but the whole process of changing career fields and going up to that point, right? I was essentially getting out of the military. I went back to college. I did 4 years. It's actually a little bit longer than 4 years because I was working full-time on top of going to college. So with that being said, I did my 4.5 years and got my bachelor's degree, right? And so I got my bachelor's degree in computer science. And I had said it in some of my other videos, I've always been intrigued by computers, right? I've always loved things like Photoshop, and I've always loved web design and stuff like that. And I used to do web pages back in high school for fun, right? So my biggest thing was that's what I wanted to do as my career. And when I first tried to go in the military, that didn't happen. So I went back to college and I got my degree, right? I studied in computer science. That was my major. I was hoping to become a programmer, right? Because that's what I originally wanted to do before, I went the whole military route and everything like that. And so I went back and I got my degree, right? It took me, 4.5 years, whatever it was. And I ended up finding out, right, that I started applying for jobs because I was getting close to, I think I had a couple months left, and I was getting ready to graduate, and I wanted to try to transition, right? But then it comes down to the whole experience thing, right? And I forget that thing, right? You've been in a career for 12 years and then you're going to try to switch over to a different career field. And I really found that it was really difficult, right? It doesn't matter if you have a degree, people still want the experience. And it's hard, right? Because I didn't know where to start, right? All you get is the college stuff that they give you, and a lot of that stuff is good knowledge base, but when it comes to the workplace, it really doesn't matter, right? You really do need experience, and that's for good reason, right? Because a lot of times if you don't have that experience, you don't really know how the real world works. And I've noticed that when you go through any kind of formal education, right, and a lot of the stuff is very old, so it doesn't really help you as much. And then so to that point, right, I started looking around, and I tried to just get my foot in the door and get some kind of IT job just to try to get out of the telecommunications field, because I was in and out of that. I struggled a lot being on the outside of the military, and the fact that, to hold a telecommunications job was extremely hard, right? It was not easy. On the outside of the military, in the military, it doesn't matter. If you do a job, you essentially travel everywhere to do a job, right? And on the outside, as a civilian, there is no stable telecommunications job, right? Now, there's companies that have jobs. When they have work, they'll bring you onto a site and you'll work or whatever like that. But it's not consistent, right? Unless there's some big project that goes on for many months or possibly even years. But the consistency isn't there, right? You're constantly moving, essentially. So that's why it pushed me even more to go into college and get my degree in computer science. And then transition. In doing so, I was finding it hard, right? People wanted some kind of experience, right? And it was hard because at the time, I was in the prime, right? I was at the top of a 12-year telecommunications career, right? So I was at the top of the food chain, essentially, right? And then to have to take a step way back to get a junior position was extremely hard. And a lot of people wanted to pay me very low wage, right? And so my biggest thing was I had to find something, and I looked, and I got a lot of calls from people, but nobody was really interested. And I was even willing to take temporary jobs, try to get experience under my belt. I just wanted to make that transition. And so I tried many times, and it came all the way down, I think, till the last 2 months, just before I got my degree, right? And in doing so, through my wife at the time, she had a job in IT, and so she was able to hook me up with another job, right, in programming. And so with her connections, I was able to get my foot in the door and go interview with them, and I got the job, right? I was lucky enough to get the job, but the thing was the job was only supposed to be a month long, right? And I had gone a couple months without work, and I had just found a job that would have been stable for the next 5 years. And so for me to make that transition, right, was extremely hard, because especially because my son was being born, I didn't know what to do, right? Like, it was one of the hardest changes in my life was to take that leap, to take a temporary job that was only supposed to be a month long, and essentially ditch a 12-year career, right? Because I had hit the ceiling pretty quickly, and it just wasn't stable enough, right? Not enough to support a family unless I wanted to go back on the road and continue to travel, which again was the whole reason why I got out of the military. And so the next thing I did, right, I took a leap of faith. It was extremely hard to try to make that transition, right? Because that's not at all what I wanted to do. I was like, I got 1 month, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if I can get it to work, right, if I can at least have a month experience, at least maybe that would possibly open some other doors. And so I took that leap of faith, and I remember putting in my leave, right, to leave my current telecommunications job, right. I had to let them know that I was leaving, so I put my letter of resignation in, and it was hard because I had just started that job. I was at that job for maybe a month, and then I ended up turning around, leaving, going to another job that was going to be temporary. And so it was one of the craziest things I think I've done to that point. And I ended up going, right. I was like, okay, well, let me just get the experience. And I remember putting that letter of resignation in, and a lot of people were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I have to trust my gut on this, right? Like, I have to get this experience. If I want to change career fields right after a 12-year career, I have to do this, and I got to do it now. This is my only opportunity. I have to take advantage of it. And so I went, and it was extremely scary, right? Like, I remember the first 2 weeks, I was working my butt off, and I was just trying to learn and absorb as much as possible. And the biggest thing that happened, right, is after 2 weeks, I ended up finding out that they were in talks with perhaps extending the contract, the job that I was on, and I was like, oh, that's great. I hope so, because that gave me more experience. And I think the job actually got extended 2 months, and I was ecstatic. I was like, all right, that's more experience. And so I kept going, right, trying to absorb as much as possible. Okay, I got 2 more months. So what I'm gonna do is absorb as much as possible. And then the next thing I knew, they were like, okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and extend it 6 months. And I was like, I was in heaven at that point, right? I was like, yes, I can get close to a year, right, under my belt of experience. It's like, all this experience is helping me, right? I took that leap of faith for a temporary 1 month job, and it got extended 8 months. And so I was extremely excited. And again, I was learning as much as I could. I was doing podcasts all the time as well, so I was learning when I was on the road, because it wasn't close. Like, it was an hour one way to get to this job as well, so nothing was really in my benefit aside from getting the experience, but it was well worth it, right? Because I had to take that leap of faith, and I had to go out of my way to be able to get that one thing that I wanted. And I got it. I made it work for 8 months, and then close to the 8-month window, it was actually funny because it got extended again for another 4 months. So we got extended out, was looking good, and then I finally reached a 1-year experience. And then, needless to say, right, it got extended out, I think 2 more months, and then they essentially lost that contract. But I was able to get over a year and about 2 months under my belt. And then I ended up actually finding another job that was more stable. Right after that, it was a programming job, and that's just the biggest thing, right? That event in my life was so weird, right? Because I was working this physical job to go to a desk job where I was actually programming, doing the thing that I wanted to do my whole life, And I had to take that leap of faith, right? It was hard when you come from a 12-year career to completely change a career field and then go on a temp job and get extended that much out, right? It just really goes to show you to follow your heart, and that leads you the right way, right? Like it won't lead you astray. Like that's your path and you will go that way. And I've always felt that way, and that was probably the biggest leap of faith I had taken to that point. It was scary, again, because I was turning everything that I knew into something I didn't know at all. And that can be scary, but you have to believe, right? If something is telling you, right, if your intuition is telling you to go that way, then you really have to go that way. And it changed my life dramatically, right? It changed everything. It changed my pay. It changed, my atmosphere. My atmosphere was the biggest thing because I wanted to get out of that telecommunications atmosphere. It wasn't a pretty atmosphere, right? But I loved it, right? Like the new programming position, it was everything I dreamt of, right? And having that and being able to call myself, a programmer and do all these things that I've always wanted to do as a kid. So it was always so intriguing, and I was so glad that I made that decision and ended up going back to college and ended up taking that leap of faith and taking that temporary job. So I hope this can help some people out there. I know it's my story, but I hope you can take something from it and realize that taking a leap of faith, and it may seem like a small window, but it's your chance, right? And a lot of times it blows up bigger than what you think it could. And so you just gotta believe. You gotta trust that instinct and go for it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button on the way out. Until next time, I will see you guys later.